Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today I'm back down in the sanctuary again and sitting in front of the grow plants or the starter plants and all this art from all these great people that hang around here. Got my headset on, brown hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a Don't Forget Flint t-shirt that has evolved for me over the years. Obviously, we have the water crisis and other things with, violence and police brutality and things like that. But also the entrepreneurial ecosystem is just thriving over there. So don't forget to support Flint and go over there once in a while and check out some of their pop-ups and all of that. So don't forget Flint is evolving for me. And today on the show, we have a new friend, and man, this guy has a ton of positive energy. How you doing, Matthew?
Hey, I'm doing well. Great to see you. Thank you for having me on today.
You know, I don't know if it's a placebo effect or something, but I've been working out in the sun all day, and I'm kind of tired, and I'm not motivated. And I know you do a lot of motivational stuff, and we talked for 15 minutes, and I thought I was preparing you, and I'm all pumped up for this now, man. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
So, and your background's really interesting. I want to do something. Tell me to stop. Yeah, that's better, isn't it?
Perfect. Yeah, that looks great.
A lot of stuff in your background there. You said Thor's hammer was there?
I do. I have a Mjolnir over here in my over my shoulder. So Thor's hammer from the Avengers movies. I've got the Infinity Gauntlet behind me as well, and buttress from the Capitol, and some really fun things. Painting of the American flag that I did, and a quote from Steve Jobs about the crazy ones and how the crazy ones are the ones that change the world. So that's the backdrop that I've got behind me here.
Yeah, that's motivational too.
It is.
So let's get into you. Will you mind telling us about where you were born and raised, where you went to school, how you kind of got to what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. And, so I'm actually an East Lansing native. I was born and raised here at the old Ingham Regional, whatever it was called before. I was born there. And so I've been in Lansing my whole life. My father actually has worked for the state of Michigan for the majority of his career. And so I remember I used to drive. We had one car when I was growing up, and so I used to drive towards the Capitol every single day to pick him up and drop him off. And so I've been, Lansing is near and dear to my heart. And after a short little jaunt in Minneapolis for a few years, I came back, and we live now in East Lansing, right near Costco. Actually, we're just a little north of Costco. So this area is it's home for sure.
Yeah. So and did you say you went to Michigan State?
I did, yeah, yep. So I was homeschooled from 4th grade through 12th grade. I went to public school for a few years, then I was homeschooled, and so now as all of these kids have been experiencing a version of homeschooling for the last year. It's been kind of fun. I was reading an article this morning about how homeschooling has really grown in affinity in people's minds as a result of COVID, and so that was kind of a neat experience that I had, and it afforded me some neat opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had. Helped make online learning or learning kind of in my own, having to find solutions for myself. It really helped support that, which has served to be useful throughout my career and entrepreneurship and so forth. And then I ended up going to Lansing Community College for a few years, and then on to Michigan State, and graduated with a degree in hospitality business. So I spent 10 years in the restaurant industry, which was, deep passion that I love, service and serving people. And then I moved on beyond that.
So what are some of the things that you've done, or some of the other things that you've done leading up to the leadership coaching that you're doing now?
Absolutely. Thank you. When I graduated from Michigan State, I went out to Minneapolis for a few years and ran this beautiful restaurant called the Capitol Grill. There's restaurants all over the country. They had 45. I was on deck to go to California, which I was pretty excited about. Having grown up in Michigan, I was looking forward to West Coast sun. And then in the last minute, they said, "Hey, we're going to send you to Minneapolis, this restaurant that's failing. You're going to be part of the 5th team in 10 years. And if your team doesn't succeed, we're going to close the restaurant." And here I was 24 when I graduated, and it was a pretty daunting experience. But what was really neat was it was kind of this thing where I had to realize I had to trust myself. And other people were trusting me and entrusting me with huge responsibilities. My bar was ranked number 45 out of 45 in the country, so I had nowhere to go but up, which was kind of a cool experience. I actually got it to number 1 within a year. I didn't have to reduce headcount. We didn't have to do anything nefarious or anything like that. Just really tightened up. But what was interesting was the reason why I have this hammer behind me is because I earned the nickname the Hammer while I was there. And I didn't really understand it at first. I thought it was just this cool nickname that people had given me, but I realized that they gave it to me because they were fearing me, and that they were. I had become the chief disciplinarian in the restaurant. My colleagues didn't really enjoy doing the write-ups and the terminations and all this stuff, and I didn't enjoy it either. But I had a style that allowed me to do it without losing sleep, and so anytime somebody got sent into the office to meet with me, it was not good. And so I earned this nickname, the Hammer, just based on my personality and my attitude. And one day, I remember I was really frustrated. I had all the people who were on the team. I mean, these were professional servers, professional bartenders. Some of them had been in the business longer than I had been alive. And I walked into the office one day. I was just frustrated. I went to go see the chef, and I was like, "Chef, why don't these people just listen to me? Like, I'm the manager. They should listen to me." He's like, "Yeah, listen to yourself. You're a jerk." And it was just this like moment of like, oh, like, all right, like I thought you were gonna have my back on this, and like you're holding me accountable. And so it took a little time. I kind of softened my stance a little bit, but I didn't really know how to behave differently. It wasn't until I left the restaurant, we got the bar to number 1, got the whole restaurant secured and in a good place. It was approved for a $2 million expansion, so there was no closing at all. Like we fixed it, and so I had the opportunity to come back to Lansing area and rebrand a heating and air conditioning company. And I had joined there and had some really neat opportunities to grow the business, and we grew at 19% every year. And we got the first salesperson at $2 million ever in their history. It was some 70 years old, and so great things were happening. But I had this guy on my team who was just super negative and toxic, and just not in alignment with the organization anymore. The problem was, though, he sold half the annual sales for the company, so I couldn't just write him up and fire him like I had done before. I had to figure out how to learn how to work with him. And so one night I was on the internet, and just kind of serendipitously, I bumped into the Dale Carnegie course. I found an ad on Facebook or something, and learned about the Dale Carnegie course. And I went to the owner and I said, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna get out of this, but they talk about leadership, and I feel like leadership is the piece I'm missing right now. Like, I think I need to go take this program. And so I went to it, and I had just kind of this epiphany while I was in the program. I realized, like, I make everyone around me cry. I make my mom, my brother, my wife, all of my employees. I make people cry all the time. And it wasn't because I was a bully or mean, but I was just so like focused on results, and I was really focused on outcomes. And I wasn't focused on the fact that there are people with feelings who are making these things happen. And it was really kind of an eye-opening experience for me to have this aha moment of like, I need to treat people like humans instead of like, human robots. And that's not a surprise to anyone else, but it really was to me. And so it was a real moment of kind of awakening of, okay, so this is the difference between management and leadership. And I really started to realize like what that looks like and what that means. And so I also know, through all wonderful things I've had the opportunity to do, that if we ever want to be a master of something, we have to be able to teach other people how to do it. And so I really wanted to like get my hands around this and become a leader that I, aspired to be, and other people would, think back on as like, this was the person who helped me in my career. And so I decided to become a Dale Carnegie trainer, and went through that process and did a bunch of things with them, and had the opportunity to be a corporate in-house trainer for auto owners insurance. I did that for a number of years, where I was their dedicated trainer there, which was really neat. And during that, I also had the opportunity to become an education consultant. So I had left the heating and air conditioning company to go into education. But what was interesting was my degree was in hospitality business. And what I knew, what I had been educated in, what I had spent years doing was restaurants, steaks and fine dining and that kind of thing. Then I go to heating and air conditioning, where I knew nothing about it, nothing at all, literally nothing. And, but the owner, he believed in me, he trusted me, I had to trust in myself, and, good things happened. We grew that company. Then I had the opportunity to become this partner in the education consulting firm. Again, I knew nothing about education, but I did know about service, and I really believed in service. And if we're treating people, well and taking care of them and really focusing on their needs, then we're always going to be able to do the right thing. And so that led to just some really wonderful other opportunities. And ultimately what ended up happening was I had two experiences that were really pretty formative in my career. One was I had the opportunity to work with this. I worked with a lot of large organizations and doing huge talent development partnerships. I sit on the leadership council for the Small Business Association of Michigan. I've been on their council for, I guess, 4 years now. And I formed a partnership with them in regards to talent development. They have about 28,000 small business organizations, and each of those businesses have between 2 and 100 employees. And so given that they're all over the state, they needed a decentralized solution for talent development. So I put that together with them, and that was a pretty big win. I got the opportunity to do some other really big things that I'd never done before. I just had to trust myself the whole time. And big things kept happening, which was great. And then I had this opportunity that was really pretty wild with this statewide education firm. And I was helping their executive team. I was doing a year-long project to help shift their culture. It was 6 months of diagnostics and 6 months of delivery. And so I really, dug deep and worked with their executive team to identify what the problem was, and discovered that the CEO, who wanted nothing to do with this, played a critical role in part of the challenges that we needed to resolve. And he was already kind of aware of that. And so I went to go have a meeting with him and do like the 6-month report out so that we could go, start to do delivery. And this guy, he already knew, because he'd already been coached before, that there were a few critical flaws that he needed to correct, and he just didn't want to. And so I was tap dancing around it because I knew enough about him and I'd spent enough time with him. And but he also knew the direction it was going. So before I even got there, he stands up, and I'm in the top floor of this building in this beautiful conference room. He stands up and he's like, "How much do we still owe you? $40,000? I'll pay you $40,000 to get out of my office right now." And I just remember thinking, like, you're going to pay me more than what you pay somebody in an entire year to leave your office. Like, I'm willing to take it. I mean, it was crazy. So I remember thinking, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening right now. Like, how do I handle this? And it was one of these moments where I really had to trust myself. And I took a breath and navigated through that conversation, and it went well enough that he invited me to go to breakfast with him a day later, and we finished everything and made it work, and we did the rest of the project, and it was great. I had this other opportunity that was really pretty formative, where the consulting firm I'd been with, they'd been working for 10 years on this one contract, trying to get this contract done. It was a private-public partnership. It was a proactive mental health program for youth. And it was great, and everyone liked it. They just couldn't get it done for some reason. There was always a hiccup, there was always a hurdle. It just wasn't getting done. And so they said, we've been trying this for a long time. Like, if you want to give it a Hail Mary and go for it, like, we haven't been able to figure it out. Maybe you will. And I said, yeah, sure, give it to me. I'll give it a go. And we got the contract done. And we got a five-year contract. It was great. And so I had this opportunity. I wanted to go experience what I told them they were going to experience. So I went to go actually be one of the delivery people, one of the trainers for this program. So I'm sitting in this high school, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks, working with ninth graders. Like, I've been working with corporate people for my whole career. It was a very different demographic, but it was fun because working with kids, kids, once they crack through their shell, like they'll just think you're the greatest thing ever. And so I had this great relationship with them, and this was a proactive mental health program. So it was, instead of being reactive, it was really to try to steel them, to increase their mental resilience and so forth. And we knew there were a couple kids who were really struggling with different things that they had been experiencing in their lives. There were a couple people who were maybe doing a little bit of self-harm. There were a couple who were very, very passively talking about, what they were thinking about doing or not doing. And so we had recovery plans in place for these kids and so forth. But there was one boy that just stunned me. He came up to me one day, and he was quarterback of the football team. He had good grades. He was athletic and attractive and well liked, and he had everything going for him. He's like, if you watch a movie, a high school story, like, he was that stereotypical kid. And he walks up to me one day at the end of the program and he says, "I think about suicide every day of my life." And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I knew there were kids who were struggling, but like this kid stunned me because I didn't see that from him. He had hid this so well. And so the context of the conversation, the way that he brought it to me, his body language, all these things, I knew that this was a crisis moment. This was a high stakes moment. And it was really one of these things of like, depending on how I worked with him, could be the difference between whether or not what decision he made. And so I remember I prayed at that moment. I'm like, God, just like help me get through this. Help me do the right thing for this boy and, help him. And so I asked him some questions and he told me a little bit more. And I said, all right, so what I'm hearing is you're in pain. You know how to stop your pain and you're not willing to. Like, why haven't you killed yourself? And so that sounds like such a cold question, but the reality is, for anyone who's listening right now or watching a recording, that if you ever are helping somebody in a mental health crisis, and this was a crisis, you ask them these hard, very blunt questions, because what happens is somebody who's in that state of mind has nothing left to lose, and they're not going to lie to you. So they'll give you their playbook, and then you can help them navigate through it. And so that's what you do. You ask them very, very blunt questions. So I asked him why he hasn't killed himself, and he just starts to cry. He's like, I couldn't do that to my mom. And so I remembered, I knew if I pointed at his mom, like we could navigate through this with him. And so I asked him some more questions and, and help support him a little bit. And I finally say, you're in pain. You know how to stop it. You're not willing to, and you'd rather endure it than cause pain in someone else. That's a leader. That's the kind of person I want to follow. And this boy starts crying and he hugs me. And that was it. That was the moment. He wanted to be seen as a leader. That was so important to him. He really, really wanted to be seen as a leader. And when he heard that, it just shifted his mindset. And so we did a bunch of other recovery things. And he came to me at the end of the program and he hugs me. He looks at me. He's like, you saved my life. And so, these moments were so formative and so important and so meaningful. And I share it because like none of these things that I experienced, had I previously experienced, right? I mean, I had some work, I had done work in mental health. I had done some of that. I had helped people dealing with their challenges, but I hadn't dealt with a crisis like this. I hadn't had a guy, basically try to kick me out of his office. I hadn't had these things happen before. I had never worked in these industries, but I had always had some versions of success in the past or some versions of lack of success that I learned from, that when I grabbed all the parts and pieces, I was able to put them together and really find a solution that was helpful and meaningful. And so I share this because this is true for all of us. We've all been successful in our lives before, and we've all had moments that we wish were more successful. And when we trust ourselves, we have everything within us that we can put it all together. And so thank you for asking about my history, because that gets us basically to 2020. So we can go from there if you'd like.
Well, I gotta, there's 100 things I could ask you. And the thing that just keeps sticking in my mind as you're talking through this is that, you've had a well-rounded career to be able to look from different industries, different problems, different solutions, diversity of thought and diversity of people in ages and race and everything, I'm sure. And, when I see coach right now, how many coaches are on LinkedIn? It seems like a lot of people are calling themselves a coach. They're pivoting. I'm going to be a coach. And, it seems to me like, no, you are the real deal. You have learned your coaching. So I just wanted to point that out because I do get a few coaches on the show and I never know what to expect. And they all have great stories and great passion. But that sounded incredible what you have done. And the other word is just trust yourself, or the phrase you're using is trust yourself. And we talk about trust a lot because in our world and what we do here, it is our economy. It is everything. It is our relationship, really. So we talk about, Covey's emotional bank accounts, and we talk about, the different pillars of trust, and always say it's an economy of relationships. You must have thought that the entire time too, that it's not the steak, it's the relationship.
That's exactly right. Yeah, for me, it was always about service, and service and trust, kind of, they're not interchangeable, but they play so tightly together. So trust is something that I have a deep affinity for, and I can share a little bit about. One of the things that was neat was as I came to 2018 and 2019, I finished a pair of graduate degrees. I got a Master of Science in Conflict Management and then an MBA. And then in the end of 2019, I was honored by Dale Carnegie. I had been the corporate trainer for auto owners, and I'd worked with a bunch of other organizations and so forth. And so Dale Carnegie recognized me as the #1 corporate trainer in the world in 2019. And so there's about 3,000 Dale Carnegie trainers. So it was a big honor. And so I was really kind of at the peak of my career at this point, and the nonprofit that I had been serving that got that deal done and went and did that work and so forth with the boy, the nonprofit said, we're at a place where we'd like to grow. We'd like to bring you on as our full-time executive director to grow it. And I said, yeah, sure, let's do this. And so January of 2020, I shifted to from consulting to full-time executive director. So I was working with the legislature. I had a lobbyist that I'd spent a lot of time with, and so we had about 30 meetings with state reps and senators, and I got key verbal approval from one of the state reps. I had been seeking $1.5 million for this broad-scale pilot, and we got approval for $3 million. So it was huge. It was going to be a line item in the budget, which was also huge. It wasn't going to be something buried. It was like a line item. It was a pretty big deal. That happened 2 days before COVID. And so I immediately shifted. I was like, okay, I'm not even going to wait because I know this is probably not going to fly. Like I'm just going to, and if it does fly, great, but I don't expect it to. So I immediately started working with DC and Congresswoman Slotkin, and started working with her office. That was even a heavier lift. And we got a new $3 million in the CARES Act. And so she went on the news talking about mental health for her district, for youth, and how great it was, due to this pandemic and all these things that we need right now. And so it was great. It was a huge win, but the money just took forever to show up, and the fundraising dried up, and I cut all the costs, and I had to lay myself off in July. And so it was this moment where I really had to trust myself, and like, what do I want to do next? And I was offered a really neat job with an international university. I was going to work in the president's office as their global communications director. I was pretty excited about that, but it just something felt weird. It didn't feel right, and I told my wife. My wife is a stay-at-home parent, so I'm the only breadwinner for our family, and so I went from being a highly paid consultant to unemployment like immediately, and so I told her, I was like, I don't know, like I don't have anything right now, but like it just doesn't feel right. And she's like, well, you've always trusted yourself and made choices that make sense for all of us, so trust yourself now and do what you think is right. And so I turned it down, and I started thinking, like, what do I really want to do, and who do I want to do it with? And so to your point about trust, I started asking. There were a small group of people, kind of diverse group of people, but people that I really respect, that I started inviting over to my house. This is still in the middle of the pandemic. This is probably August, September, October, something like that. And I started inviting them to my house. We sat on the porch, and I made them whatever their favorite cocktail was, and we just sat on the porch and talked for like 2 hours. And getting all these various viewpoints. There's about 8 people I did this with. Getting their various viewpoints was really helpful. It allowed me to kind of process my experience, but it also allowed me to really, hear from them, with thoughts and ideas, and kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. And so what I decided to do was I went back to a bunch of my old clients. So many of my past clients had friended me on Facebook and so forth, and I was like, you know what? If you're willing to be friends with me in this kind of a platform, then I'll be, I'm cool with reaching out to you. And so I reached out, and I asked a number of people to record for me just a 2-minute video of the most impactful thing that they had experienced in our time together. And so I ended up getting 35 videos from people talking about the impact that had happened in their lives. And what was incredible was, like, at first it built my confidence, because we associated our value with our professions. And so, to be at the peak of my career and then lose my job, to have to lay myself off was dizzying. And this was really a pretty powerful thing to make me feel good about myself, which was something I needed in that moment. And I think we all need when we're facing something like that. But the other thing it did was it informed me on how I wanted to build my business. I didn't decide that I was going to I'm going to build this business because it's what I want and what I think is important and whatever. And so, no, I'm going to build what people need and what people want. And so these 35 videos, they all kind of fell into these segments. And I was like, okay, so, if I really distill down what these people are saying, like, these are the things that people want. And so I decided to build a company around these ideas, and trust was one of the things, to your point, that came out of it. And so we focus, really heavily. It's working with managers, strong managers, people like me who was the hammer. I was good at results. I was getting things done, but I wasn't a leader. So it's helping somebody who's got numbers, goals, small or large team. They got that all figured out, but they're not a leader, and they know that they can be more than they are. And so it's really about helping people learn how to motivate, inspire, and empower other people. And so we do that by focusing on a variety of topics. Just really, really neat things like influence and diversity, equity, and inclusion for leaders, engaging remote workers, hybrid workers, really the importance of trust, the power of vulnerability. We talk about all these wonderful things, but they all kind of distill down to respect, empathy, service, and trust. To your point, trust. And so that's where we landed with the company. And one of the things that I've done is, kind of the pillar of what it is. I listen to business people all the time say, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Well, if we all say we're busy, it's kind of like saying I'm breathing air. Like, great, you're busy, good for you. Like, we're all busy, get over it. Are you productive? Like, that's the question that we should really be asking. You're busy, but it's probably because you're not doing things that you should be doing. You should be working with others and delegating responsibility so that they can grow. And so I have this whole concept that I introduced at the very beginning of my program. It's called the Leadership Mastery Program, where managers are busy and leaders rest. So rest is, it's kind of this double meaning of we need to give ourselves the space to do what we need to do. We need to give ourselves the white space for creative thought. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, you're a knowledge worker. So, you need to have creative thought and opportunities to come up with new ideas that you can, grow your organization and so forth and move it forward. So it's that kind of a concept to rest, but it also stands for building or giving respect. So respect, give respect. Empathy and really demonstrating empathy towards other people, being of service, and building trust. And so respect, empathy, service, and trust are really the platform on which we operate and we focus on. And when you do these things, it allows you to motivate, inspire, and empower other people. And so to your point about trust, yeah, I believe very, very deeply in that. And it's just so critically important that we build that trust, because when we have that trust, we get buy-in. And I'm seeing all these articles, somewhere between 40 and 60% of people are planning on leaving their organizations in 2021 or 2022. It's pent up demand from 2020 and burnout from the pandemic. And so there are people, like half of the workforce is planning on leaving. 85% of the workforce is either disengaged or actively disengaged. This is the worst engagement scores we've ever had. And so, we have the power to change this dynamic, not necessarily for the whole organization, depending on our role, but we can for our teams. And when we change the dynamic for our teams, that does impact the organization. And so we really have a lot of power as managers and leaders if we wield it correctly. And so that's the focus, is to really help people and motivate, inspire, and empower other people.
So we didn't prep for this, but I'm going to take us on a small tangent here.
Right.
So where are you at, like, when you think about the $15 an hour or $300 for, extra unemployment, and people just saying, why would I go back to work? That guy's a jackass anyway. Where's, do you think about that problem a lot?
I do. Yeah, I think about that problem a lot. I think it's a real problem that we're facing right now. And really, I think the intention was pure, but it was short-sighted to award, 600 federal dollars at the beginning of the pandemic and $300 now as it is. It's because the challenge is somebody who was professional like I was, $300 doesn't really mean a whole hell of a lot to cover my bills, versus somebody who was an hourly worker where they're now making more money. My children are very, very active at Goldfish Swim School. We've been tremendous supporters of Goldfish for some 6 years now. We've had our kids there, and the second they opened back up, we sent our kids back. We think they do a great job. And I was talking with the general manager, and she said, we're having a really hard time getting some of these people back because they're making 180% of what they were making to not work. And so to me, I think the idea was really pure, and trying to make sure that people stay whole. I think the execution was the miss, where really nobody should have ever made more than 100% of their income. And they probably should have made, call it, pick any number, 70%, 80%, 95%, doesn't matter. But to make more than 100% is problematic. And those dollar amounts aren't equal from income to income, because $300 doesn't mean that much when you're making, more money than an hourly worker. So I think there was a misstep on the part of the government. I applaud them for trying to helped people, cover their expenses, because a lot of people lost, like myself. This was the peak of my career. I had to lay myself off. I didn't fail. I didn't do something stupid that I got fired. I still have bills to pay because the economy blew up, and that was really because the government made choices that in the moment they believed were the right choices, but impacted all of us. And so I guess that's really, kind of my hot take on that, is that, I don't think the idea was bad. I think the execution was just short-sighted.
All right, thank you for that. And I've got a few more questions for you, but I want to put all the links that you,
thank you,
had given to me out there. So a lot of ways to connect with Matthew and watch videos on YouTube and all of that. Yeah. The question, your art. I want to talk about your art a little bit. Tell us about you as an artist.
Yeah, so let's see if I can turn it here. There we go. So I made that American flag, and I've got a number of other pieces that I've been really honored to make. Actually, so I started making art in 2015. I had started graduate school, and we had had our first child. I was, new in this consulting business. I had all sorts of responsibilities, and really a lot of responsibilities to make things happen. And I needed something that was like entirely for me, that I could do just because I wanted to. And I had, always had an affinity towards art. And whenever my wife and I would travel prior to children, we would visit one new country every year. That was our goal, is to go somewhere that we hadn't been, and we'd always purchase a piece of art from a local artist. And so when we started having children, that started to taper off, and we wanted more art. And it's like, oh, well, let's make it for us at our house. And if I'm making it, then if we don't like it, then we just don't hang it up. And so I started making a couple pieces, and then I made a few more, and then I started giving them to auctions and things like this, and giving them as gifts. And one thing led to another, and I ended up with an installation, and then I ended up in all these different juried exhibitions and all these things, and ended up, I was recognized Best in Show in Connecticut in 2020. I've been in California and Illinois and just all over the country, and so I'll be an art prize this year, which is very exciting. I'm doing a collaboration with Atwater Brewery. They're my favorite brewery, and I've got actually two pieces of art in the Grand Rapids restaurant right now. I did one for them for beer prize, which was kind of an art prize substitute last fall, and so we decided to make an intentional collaboration. We're doing a really fun piece that's focused on synesthesia, which is the overlapping of senses. So people who see sound, like they have colors associated with sound or things like this. So I actually have it myself. It's very involuntary. I haven't been able to figure out why. It's very, very irregular, but occasionally I'll see a picture and I'll be able to smell that picture. So if I saw a billboard one time of a hot dog, and I could smell the hot dog. And same thing with car exhaust and things like this. I can smell it even though I know I shouldn't actually be able to. And so I was inspired by that. So I'm going to transform a song. It's by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, because they're from Grand Rapids, and it's called Especially in Michigan. It's art prize in Michigan. So I transcribed the notes into colors that are associated with regional food items from Michigan. So it's really this holistic Michigan experience where you'll have all your senses activated as a result of viewing this picture. And it's going to be a beer collaboration as well. So that's been really fun. It's been a cool thing that I've gotten to do, just kind of out of passion, and it's become its little thing of its own. So that's been really neat. That's
awesome. I used to see Flea at the Reptile House in Grand Rapids in the 90s all the time.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He'd come in and play around. And that was a complete distraction and your art piece is super cool. What's this thing called again? Because I tell people this all the time. I can see the smell. I can see the sound. It's called what?
Synesthesia. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Synesthesia. Yeah. Yep.
I'll find it. It. I'm sure my wife. I don't know words. My wife knows words. I know numbers. So all these things. What would you say? Like, how would you summarize your mission, or do you have 15 missions? Do you have a common theme across your missions?
Well, so when I was 5 years old, I actually just found a picture of this story. There was a picture taken when I was in kindergarten. I made a macaroni necklace one day, and I don't know why they took my picture, but they did. And I just found it, and when I went home that day, I was so excited. I showed my mom this macaroni necklace, and she said, "Oh, that's really great. What'd you learn at school?" And I said, "I learned I could be anything I want when I grow up. I could, and she said, "Well, what do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I might be able to be, maybe I want to be an astronaut or a dinosaur bone digger, or maybe I could dig up dinosaur bones on the moon." And she's like, "Oh, that's great. Why don't you go put your macaroni necklace on your bulletin board and you can come have a snack." And I remember standing, 5 years old, standing in front of my bulletin board in my bedroom, thinking as I'm hanging this necklace up, if I could be anything I want when I grow up, I could even be the president of the United States. And so since I was 5 years old, whether I ever become president of the United States or not, that's probably secondary. But I kind of renewed that when I was about 15 and deciding what I wanted to, go to college for, because I knew I wanted to go into politics ultimately. And if you're going to go into politics, what's going to be that foundation? And so that's how I ended up in the restaurant industry, because I knew that if I wanted to be a small business owner, I could replicate restaurants and so forth. And so it was all pragmatic, because ultimately, for me, my mission is about service. I had the opportunity to be the commencement speaker when I graduated from Michigan State. I graduated in December, and at least back then they did one Bachelor of Arts and one Bachelor of Science commencement in December. And so there were 5,000 people in the Breslin Center, and I'm presenting in front of all of them as the student commencement speaker. And I'm like, all right, so we all just graduated like 5 minutes ago. We got to get, we need to be of service and get to work. Like, let's all go do good things. And so that was really my mission there. And as I went through all of this, these career jumps and so forth, where I had to trust myself every single time, it was really about being of service, not to the organization. I mean, yeah, that's important, but really to the user. And why am I aligning with something that why am I going to this organization? Is because I wanted to be of service. And so to me, that's the direction that I'm going. I do still plan to run for office at some point. It's really kind of a matter of, when is logical and appropriate, and we'll navigate that as we get there. I'm leaning towards running for Congress, and we'll do that as the time is appropriate. But yeah, that's really, for me, it's always been of being of service, and that's really where I landed with leadership coaching for results. Is I want to serve other people. I mean, that was really the core foundation for me of like, why do I want to start a company in the first place? I mean, I could probably make more money getting a job, certainly at least the short term, than I could by starting a company. And but I knew that wasn't going to be fulfilling for me. I really wanted to be of service in a way that was meaningful to me and meaningful to other people. And those 35 videos were really very informative for me of what had been meaningful to them in the past. And so I didn't feel like I could betray that. Once everybody told me the impact that it had made in their lives, I'm like, I kind of got to do this. Like, I mean, good things that have happened here. So that to me is really it. It's about service.
Was that an aha moment or an oh shit moment? Or a
both.
Little bit of both?
Both. Yeah, I think it was affirming. That's really what it was. It was affirming. I mean, none of these things were necessarily, out of left field and totally, obscure. And when they told the story, I'm like, okay, I remember that. I remember doing that. I understand why that was important to this person. But it was, having it all come so rapid fire and so like really, really distilled. There wasn't a lot of meandering in the conversation. It was pretty cut and dry. Like this happened, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, I would say it was a little bit of both.
So what do you do every damn day to push that forward?
There's two things that I do every damn day. One I have put a small hiatus on because I recorded 100 leadership videos. And so I think you've got the link there that you're sharing, the YouTube channel. And so every day I was recording a leadership video. I did it 100 times. I really admire you for doing this 365 days. I don't know how you're doing it. That's a lot. Doing 100 was a pretty heavy lift. And so I'm giving myself a little bit of time to, focus on the business a little more intentionally, but also, reset with a series of new topics. But all these topics, I mean, I've had the opportunity over the years to coach and work with thousands of people. And so these 100 leadership lessons are really real world examples that I've had the opportunity to either help somebody navigate or they've navigated and I've learned while kind of holding their hand with them. And so I share all these lessons. They're all 3 to 5 minutes long. There's an actionable takeaway. And to me, that was helpful for me because it really made me reflect on what are the lessons that I believe are the most important, and it was also interesting because the response that I got from different ones kind of helped me. If somebody disagreed more vehemently with one of them, I was like, oh, okay, let's pay attention to this because that's pretty interesting to me. And so that was something I did every day or have been doing every day. The other thing that I do every day that this is new since I've started the business is I'm spending a lot of time in my craft. So every day I'm reading for 1 or 2 hours, sometimes books, but also a lot of articles within this space, Harvard Business Review and Forbes and Inc. and all these things, really understanding what's topical and what's timeless within this space. And it's something that I've always done, but not this intentionally. And it's been really pretty cool because I'm, just immersing myself within my craft, and that's really strengthening me as well. So that's something I'm doing every damn day.
Yeah. I bounced through phases of Covey. I guess you're probably supposed to do all 7 habits at once, but I can't manage that. But I get into this Sharpen the Saw phase, and which sounds like what you're saying there. So, there's so much I want to talk to you about, but we'll never keep this going. The President of the United States. All right.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
That would be super good for our NFT if we ever make it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it would. You're right.
We daisy chained the shows together, and I'm going to skip yesterday's show because we did a different format. But on Saturday, I had Nancy Malo, who runs the Eastside Neighborhood Organization. She's been involved in it for 26 years. And her question to you is, are you more of a night owl or more of an early bird, or do you not sleep at all, given you paint and record and author? You never talked about potential author, right?
Oh, well, I can touch on that right now. Then I can tell you about that. So when I was 16 when 9/11 happened, and so I wanted to really process 9/11. I didn't really know how, and so I started writing. And I was working for this website at the time. It was like a volunteer. I was the journalist kind of thing on this website, and I was like, I'm going to write a short fiction story, near future war story. It's kind of my way of processing it all. But I did this. I was planning on it being like 3 or 5 or 6 pages or something, and it ended up being 320 pages. And I wrote this thing from midnight to 2 a.m. Like every damn day. I was writing this thing for 2 hours in the middle of the night, and that's when my brain is most active. So if you wanted to do this show at 7 in the morning, I could have made it happen, but that's not my speed, man. I'm really we're hitting peak time for me right now. This early mid afternoon and all the way through 10, 11, 12 o'clock is where I'm really peak, and I'm definitely more of a night owl. I wish that I could get away with sleeping less or being a morning person and having more productive hours in the day. But for me, it's I do know when I'm productive, and I spend my time in that window. And so I did. I wrote that book, 320 pages. I sat on it for the last 20 years, but I actually just signed my first book deal, my first publishing deal about 2 weeks ago. And so we're publishing my master's thesis. It's called "There's No Such Thing as Right and Wrong." And it's in regards to ethics and morality, where really the easiest distillation is Democrats and Republicans. That if you and I are of opposing parties, it doesn't mean that either of us are smarter or dumber than the other. It doesn't mean either of us are better or worse than the other. It really means that we believe what we believe because of the experiences that we've had in our lives. Our lived experiences have informed our opinions, and we have affiliated based on the opinions. And so whenever somebody's saying, I see this at the federal level the most, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, what they're really doing is they're invalidating the other person's lived experience. And that's just so inappropriate and disrespectful. And so this book really makes the argument for seeking to understand the other person. I don't make a case for changing your opinion. Your opinion is yours, and you have no reason to change it unless you choose to. What we should do, though, is try to understand the other person and why do they believe what they believe and what has been their experience that's informed that. And then when we understand it, what happens magically is when we understand somebody, we start to respect them more. And when we respect the other person, we can work with them regardless of our differences, which allows us to collaborate and then get things done. And so that's the first book. And then this book I wrote when I was 16, that's on the docket as probably the second or third project. I got a couple other things in the works. So I'm a night owl, and writing is what I usually do at night.
Yeah, I love the answer. I mean, a new thing that adds to your projects list, and a new strategy too. When you said the seek first to understand, and then the respect, and then I thought it also leads to empathy. It also leads to easier to service each other, and trust comes from all of that. So,
that's right.
it's seems to be gets itself rolling and just happens or something, right?
I believe in these things very deeply.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like they've been super effective for you.
Yeah.
So tomorrow on the show, I think my guest, her name is Karen. She is AmeriCorps Health for the state of Michigan, the director of AmeriCorps,
Right.
the health part. And what question would you like me to pass to her?
I think this is neat that you do this. I really like it. And what I would love, I had a formative lesson that I learned entirely by accident. So I would love to have you ask her, what's a lesson that you learned by accident that has been impactful in your life?
Yeah, that's. I grew up in the neighborhood where we went to like elementary and high school together and stuff like that. So I'll be curious to what story she tells.
Oh, that'll be great. That'll be fun.
What story would you have, or what? I'm sorry, which lesson?
Sure. Yeah. So actually, this was really formative in my life, and it's even formative now as I'm raising my own children. My kids this summer are going to be 7, 5, and 3. And I learned about responsibility from my father. It was entirely by accident. He didn't even remember the story when I told him about it a couple of years ago. As I was raising my kids, he's like, responsibility. Why do you keep talking about responsibility? And not that he disagreed, but he thought it was interesting that it was like, coming up so repetitively for young children. And so I told him, I said, do you remember when I was a boy? I was, I don't know, maybe 9 years old or so. And we never got paid an allowance. We got paid to do our chores. And so we had a whole litany of things that needed to get done, and they were divided up between my brother, sister, and I. And we kind of got to raise our hand on what we wanted to do. And I chose doing the lawn because I was the oldest and the biggest, and it paid the most. And so that was my responsibility. I had to mow the lawn every week. I got paid $7 to do it. And so there was a period when I was, I don't remember, I was probably 9 or 10 or something. And there was this period of weeks that had been like just a monsoon. I grew up in East Lansing, and East Lansing is very low land, and this area that we lived in particular would flood regularly the backyard at least once or twice every year. And so it had just been raining and raining and raining, and the grass was very tall and it was wet, and this was still when you had to like push the lawnmower. It didn't have the self-propeller or anything like that. And so I'm pushing this thing. It kept conking out, and I was just getting frustrated and more frustrated. And I just like knocked the thing over and stormed into the house, and I was like, I'm not doing it. And I remember my dad, he was really compassionate and calm. He always had this kind of calm demeanor. And he didn't yell at me for knocking the thing over, for storming into the house. He took a moment and talked with me and listened to my frustration. And then he said, okay, well, you have committed to this responsibility. This is your responsibility. And I was like, yeah. He said, when we have a responsibility, we have to make it happen. And so for whatever reason, that just stuck with me forever. And so I've always been really mindful of my responsibilities because I take them very seriously. So if I'm going to take something on, I'm going to make it happen. And that's what I'm teaching my children as well. If you were to ask them what their responsibility is to be respectful. That's all I expect of them right now, is to be respectful. But they know. And if I ask them what my responsibility is, they know that my responsibility is to keep them safe. And so, anytime, in my 3-year-old, I was asking him the other day, he was getting all upset with me, and he didn't understand why I wasn't going to let him do whatever dangerous thing he wanted to do. And I said, what's daddy's responsibility? He said, keep me safe. I said, that's right. And I'm keeping you safe right now, even though this is unfortunately frustrating for you. I'm keeping you safe. Okay. So that was the lesson that I learned entirely by accident, and was very formative in my life.
Did he want a skateboard or something?
No, I think he wanted to go catch a turtle. We have a pond in our backyard. Oh. And my 5-year-old's all about catching turtles, and my 3-year-old actually got bit. And I was like, no, you can't go run around the pond by yourself, man. We got to do this with you.
So now on to a couple other questions, and we'll finish up here. What is happiness to you, and are you happy?
I think happiness for me has kind of evolved a little bit throughout my life. As I define it now, I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with so many people and to hear from them and their lived experiences, good and bad. And you can't help but be impacted when you work with people. And if you're not impacted, you're probably not doing it right. And so really, I think for me, happiness is fulfillment and fulfillment to me is being of service and contributing positively. I am a millennial. I'm one of the older millennials, but I'm a millennial, and one of the things that's true for millennials is we want to leave the world a better place than we found it. And I really believe that very, very deeply and truly, that I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. And that's why, to me, service is so important. Is if I can touch somebody in a meaningful way and impact their life and make their life better, then my life has had meaning and purpose. And there's actually on my logo for Leadership Coaching for Results, I wanted to focus on the logical mindset person and the emotional mindset person. So we're talking about leadership coaching. I mean, that's very descriptive. For results. Okay, so you understand, you're getting something out of this. But then the tagline is leave your mark. And the logo itself is a fingerprint, which is how I sign all my art. So it's kind of just for fun for me to carry that over. But really, it's about leaving our fingerprints on people. All the people that you've impacted, all the people that you have helped live the lives that they're living today, and all the wonderful things that's happened in the business community as a result of the work that you do. You have left your fingerprints all over the place, and we all do this every single day, whether we want to or not. We're leaving our fingerprints on everything and everyone. And so for me, it's really about being of service, leaving fingerprints that are going to create ripple effects of positivity and just good things. And that I find to be fulfilling, and that's what makes me happy.
Have you studied Deming much in your work and your preparation? Where he talks about, his quote is, we're here to make a better world, right? Or a different world. I don't know if I mix it up sometimes, but you're just really reminding me of that right now. And that it's always the word that I always think of with happiness too, is the fulfillment, is the something. What gives you hope?
Oh, I think the pandemic has created such a unique opportunity for reflection. It's really hard for anyone to say the pandemic has brought good things, because so many bad things have come out of it, and so many lives have been lost, and so many lives have been dramatically negatively impacted. I mean, I was one of them who got caught in the crossfire. And I've had very close people to me experience COVID. Fortunately, none of them have passed. But I've had a number of people, deal with long-term ramifications of COVID. So it's hard to say that COVID or the pandemic was a good thing. But I have a real hard time not finding the good in what took place, and being thoughtful and intentional about good things happened. And when I think of this, I really think of all these wonderful young people that are going through such a unique experience that no one will have ever gone through, or likely will go through again. And what they're doing right now, I look at my own children, and they're thriving right now. They are absolutely thriving. They're very fortunate. We're very fortunate. But the experience that they've had, we have a couple families we've brought together. We have a pod school in our home, and they're just absolutely thriving. Their relationships are strong. And the relationship they have is just meaningful with their teacher, and I'm excited and inspired and hopeful because of all these young people and just the wonderful things that they can do, and the questions that they ask, and the perspective they're going to have, and really the appreciation for things that you and I never had to think about. We never had to think about wearing a face mask at the airport or at the restaurant or whatever. And this is just going to be, they're going to have a just different take on the world. And I'm really, really hopeful for all of us coming out of this with greater appreciation for what we have, for greater respect towards one another. And I really just believe that the world can be a better place as a result of this experience that we've all shared together. We just have to choose that we want better than what we've had. And I think, you're seeing that with all these everyone pushing towards greater social justice and things like this. I mean, this is important and necessary. And something that I've always believed very deeply in, and it's why diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of the things that I focus on in my program. Is when we respect each other, when we're empathetic towards each other, when we're of service towards each other, and when we trust each other, life is just better. And so that's what I'm hopeful for, and that's what gives me hope, is thinking about that.
So one of the skills to be a successful entrepreneur, as you know, is to be pretty optimistic. I mean, you can't be pessimistic. Oh, I'm going to fail today, and go through every day. How do you see that optimism and that trusting yourself? Do they play on each other, or are they the same thing? You got me thinking about that.
I would suspect they're probably different, but they play together well. The optimism can be rudderless and really without substance. It can just be blind optimism. But I think optimism grounded in reality and grounded in understanding your own limitations and where you need to bring on support, understanding the lane that you belong in. We can't be all things to all people. I'm very clear that my business is not for everybody. I'm not going to do well serving every single person. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm going to be really damn good with the people that I do serve. And so, I make no qualms about that. So I think it's a bit of both. And I think that's really how you get to logical and appropriate optimism is by grounding it in reality and grounding it in things that are going to be helpful for everybody.
Logical optimism's no fun. I want to be naive and delusional all day. I get to make up my own worlds.
Those are fun too. It's fun to do that too. To be imagined. That's why I like to write, because then you can you just go into your own world that you can create on your own.
Yeah, I was never mind. I have to start switching to reading fiction fiction lately, because the nonfiction was just getting to me too much, and we didn't get to just drift off in my imagination. What did we forget to talk about?
We covered a lot today. We covered a lot of ground. I gave you the links. Everyone's got the links. You can go to Leadership Coaching for Results to learn more about the program and if it's the right fit for you. And it's a virtual program, which is great. I'm working with a national clientele. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to do that. Those leadership lessons, I really encourage people to go there on YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of meaning and value there. And so yes, thank you for sharing those. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And the way I shared them kind of screwed up, so I'll go back and fix them in the comments later.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I share those 100 lessons too?
Please do.
Just by themselves from time to time?
That's great. I would appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot of value there for people.
I'll put that through the fledgling crew and see what they think.
Thank you.
So, what would you like to take us out with?
I've appreciated so much the opportunity to share today and to spend some time with you and to share a bit about my story and really, I've been very blessed. I've been doing, I've shared a bit about my story and encouraging people to trust themselves all over the country. I've done a kind of a virtual speaking tour over the last few months and been in a number of states doing this. And the message that I really want to share is the message that I got as a result of COVID was that we have to trust ourselves. That nobody has faced whatever people are facing right now. Whoever, as a listener, whatever you're facing right now, it could be job insecurity, it could be health insecurity, it could be financial insecurity, just insecurity. There's anxiety about re-entering the world without face masks now. Like there's just a lot of stuff that we're all facing, and that's just the things that are right on the surface. But we're all dealing with all sorts of other things. The increased consumption of different products and relationships and what's happened out of these and all that. So many things that could be causing somebody stress or anxiety or uncertainty right now. And really the message that I want to share is one of hope, that you have been successful before. You've been successful lots of times. And you've learned from times when you weren't as successful as you wanted to be. And when you take all those parts and pieces, like they may not make sense. It's like a giant puzzle. It may not make sense when you see all the parts and pieces, but or maybe a better example even is Legos, because it can be anything you want it to be. When you take all these parts and pieces and you put them together, you have the power to face anything that's in front of you. And so when you think of trusting yourself, a lot of times we've given this idea of like, you're on the edge and you've got to, take the leap of faith or something like this. And we're always worried, like, what if I fall? But if you trust yourself, what you're going to find is you're not falling, but you're flying. That's what I want to leave you with.
I love it. Thank you so very much for taking your time and sharing with us today. Thanks for coming on the show. This was a wonderful, full of knowledge show. So thank you very much. And everyone, I will be back again tomorrow at 2 p.m. for another Every Damn Day. And we will see you later. Bye-bye. See you, Matthew.